Om. Namaste, my dear hearts. How are you today? This is Krishna, and I have been taking some time to go through your lovely questions. Fantastic inquiries here. So let us start right in, shall we? Catherine writes, why is the order of the Antakarana reversed between the Vedantic and the yogic theories? And my quick and simple answer on that would be not to worry about the order, because the order is as you need to approach it. So the next one, she writes a little bit more deeply about mindfulness. And Vishva sounds like mindfulness. Are the similarities in Vedantic yogic theories that relate to mindfulness? If so, where? Am I reaching too far into these similarities? Well, no, I think reaching is good, because this is part of the seeking process and making this neurological links between the vidya, the knowledge, and then the experience inside of the body, mind, and heart. So I think this reach is a nice and healthy type reaching. So mindfulness, normally we think in the West, when we talk about mindfulness practices, we look into our Buddhist traditions. So this is what we say mindfulness. So when you hear it in a yoga classroom, normally, that is a Buddhist influence coming in, which is a great influence, but I would just understand that normally we would look at that as more of a Buddhist emphasis. Doesn't mean that as a yogi you can't emphasize mindfulness by any means, because of Buddhism and yoga and Vedanta, they are sisters. So don't have any quarrels amongst your family. So Vishva sounds like mindfulness. Well, in the manual, consciousness, Vishva is awareness. And so mindfulness, as I look at it, has an element of concentration to it, whereas mindfulness, with that concentration, because you have to put your awareness there and then add in concentration to hold the mindfulness, to hold the awareness there. So there's awareness, which we could call Sakshi Bhavana. This is where you want to start to look. If so, where do I look? Look into the word Sakshi. We talk about this. S-A-K-S-H-I, Bhavana. Bhavana means a feel. Sakshi Bhavana means the witnessing consciousness. So witnessing consciousness is similarly watching all of your thoughts. And this would be the Vedantic and the yogic doorway, if you will, for mindfulness. We call it witness consciousness. So this is just a little bit for that. How's it? Okay. Let's see. Ashley writes, Manasa Avastha, the part is most complex to her. And so she wants to get a little bit more comprehension. So she's looking at the breathing techniques, the counting backwards, the sensations of feelings, those three portions of the Manasa Avastha, the breathing techniques, the counting backwards, and the sensations. So yes, you can choose one or two of these normally in a script. You could do three, depending upon the time, if you were just working the Mano Maya Kosha like that. But you don't have to do all three. When you get ready to create your own scripts, you can do some changing or a little bit of modular with them, depending upon the script length. So you do understand that. So that's just some good clarification for you there. Is this how the classical scripts were created in a way? Well, when we say classical, we're only talking about the last, probably 30 years. Yoga Nidra, there are no classical yoga Nidra scripts from 800 years ago. Yoga Nidra has been practiced for so long. There are no classical scripts from asana practices more than 250 years ago. We don't know what the asana sequences really were like in the year 1200 when Tantra and yoga were at its peak. We have ideas, but we don't really know. So when we say classical, we're talking about from the Bihar school of yoga, from the Himalayan tradition, as it is taught through the sampradaya, the lineages that we've been giving it. So neoclassical, how's that? So you don't have to do all the three. You can just pick one of the three or the two of them. And how they were created, there is some modern adaptation here. So we are living on the front edge of drawing out from the collective unconscious these practices of yoga nidra through our collective experience. And so we want you to have fun with these scripts. And in time, we want you to be able to write your own scripts. And they're modular, like I mentioned. It's a little early for talking about that. But we'll touch more upon that in the course as we go. So, in good time, she says. That's awesome, Ashley. Not soon for sure. No, sooner than you think. Hopefully by the end of the course, you feel comfortable. Usually not. Usually it takes 6 months to start writing your scripts. Okay, my dear. Susan writes, when one falls completely asleep in yoga nidra, are they still getting some of the benefits? Why, yes, my dear. Absolutely. I like to remind people that in the modern world, there is something called being too tired, too sleepy. Oh my God, too much doing, not enough being. And so physical body, when people come, they're overtired. They're just tired. And so I say, let them sleep. I'm a big sleeper. I sleep 9, 10, 11 hours a night. And I believe that one of the secret superpowers of living in the modern time is to reclaim your sleep quota. So most people are running on sleep deficit, like a credit card deficit, and they're accumulating interest, which is not so interesting because it will tax the kidneys, the adrenals, excess cortisol in the system, all these stress hormones, and then long-term negative effects. So you've got to make a positive effects in the body. So they fall asleep in your class and they say, I'm not getting any benefit. Well, you're getting physical benefit. You're actually getting neurochemical benefit by cleaning up excess chemicals in the body, stress hormones, relieving them. You're getting mental relief. Absolutely. There's so much stress in modern lifestyle that just taking extra time to really nourish the mind in a deep way as you make your happy nest, and you really get into that sweet spot, and mind just says, oh, now I need to shut off. These are all, this is coming out of physical body and subconscious mind. So in some ways, you have to clear up some of that content to really get into the practice of yoga nidra. It forces you, by the nature of the practice itself, into a more balanced lifestyle. So I think that those are net positives for you. So yes, you're getting the benefits. From yogic theory, everything goes into every sensory impression, whether you're in deep unconscious state in sleep, the sounds are still going in, whether it's a fire engine or a mouse creeping around in your bedroom in the middle of the night. Those impressions are still going in, and that the unconscious mind is filtering them out and keeping you in deep sleep, because the intelligence still remains. The intelligence is always there, the indwelling soul, which is underlying intelligence for the awaking and sleeping conscious mind like this. It's always functioning. And so what it does is it weeds out very often all these stimulus impressions. Now, if something were to occur that was a little bit more deep in the middle of sleep, like someone were to come in your room, you wake up and you say, how do I know to wake up? Well, the consciousness is there. It was latent in an unconscious state, but it registered someone walking into the room. And I know this because every time I try to get out of the bed with my daughter when she's fallen asleep, she wakes up the second I stop touching her. And I say, you're asleep, you're completely unconscious, you're snoring. And how do you know I'm leaving the room? Because the intelligence is there. So you are still getting the benefits. And if you're in a deep sleep, and something has struck your fancy in the Sankalpa, let's say, or in the 61 points, or you're really deep into the bone marrow, you take those impressions deep inside, and in the unconscious mind, things are still churning and still burning and transforming like this. So yes, even though on top of the mind, maybe we just see someone snoring, we don't always know the deep underlying experience there. So yes, 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 my dear. Is the Sankalpa still working on the unconscious level? Yes. Most emphatically, yes. Question regarding the concept of the koshas. The manual and the corresponding lecture differentiate between Vedantic states of consciousness and the yogic koshas. Do the koshas come from, so I didn't know if that was a question or not. But yes, there's a differentiation between the Vedantic states of consciousness and the koshas. But the question here is, do the koshas also come from the Vedantic tradition? Yes, you want to remember that the Vedas is the mother and the yoga is the child. So yoga came many millennia after the Veda. You know, Veda could be 5,000 years ago, you know, so old tradition. And yoga, a relatively modern tradition, the 1200s. So 1100, 1200, when yoga was really in vogue. And now it's in a big vogue again like that, which is great. So originally theory of kosha comes from Vedic tradition, Vedantic tradition. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, it lists the 5 koshas and is part of the working knowledge set. In yoga, when we look to yoga and we teach, we mostly enter into the spiritual path in the West through the doorway of yoga and through the 24 elements of Samkhya yoga, the Samkhya Darshana, the 24 elements of which the 5 koshas, you know, are part of the Samkhya yoga. And so that's why you see it listed under the yoga section. But also there's overlap, and in the Vedic tradition, the koshas are there as well. If you had come into this practice, let's say if you came to yoga through the self-realization fellowship with Yogananda, who's a Vedantin, not a hatha yogi like Patanjali. I mean, well, Patanjali was, but not like Patabi Joyce or BKS Iyengar or something like that, who are more hatha yogis, Raja yogis. But if you came in the Vedantic side, you'd hear the koshas. And then when you'd come back, you start studying yoga philosophy and Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, which is based on the 24 elements of Samkhya Darshana, where you'd find 5 koshas again. So both sides, did you get? Okay. Whew. Mandy Ho writes, in the 61 points, you ask to bring the awareness through the body in the relaxation states before Nyasa Anugrama. It seemed a little repetitive to me, which I understand, but we're going to tug this out. And I was getting confused when I was doing it. I thought, we started with the 61 points, and why are we bringing it back into the body? Does it serve another purpose? Well, yes, my dear. This is unique to the 61 points script. First, you want to understand that. And this script is used primarily for focusing on the physical body. So you see the bone marrow is a very physical cue. So we're focusing deep on the physical body, deep physical relaxation, Shavasana style with mindfulness. Okay, I just said mindfulness. Great. So it's there. Mindfulness is always there. The 61 points, though, focuses on the prana in the pranamaya kosha. So one is physical and one is pranic. So from the outside, you might just see bones, and then you see points, which are correlating to bones and muscle, but you want to understand we're focusing on different sheaths. On the maya kosha, physical, pranamaya kosha, energetic. I love your question. Good clarifier. I'm trying to map up the 61 point script to the stages of Yoga Nidra. It says in the beginning paragraph, in the section of Yoga Nidra, in the beginning of Pratikadharana, visualizing the moon. So I'm answering Mandy's question about a specific spot in the manual. And yes, the 61 points includes a very little bit of the visualization of the symbols. At the very end of that practice, you bring your awareness to the third eye center, to the moon at the third center, and then you go into the heart center. So there's a little bit of the visualization in that 61 point script. but not a lot. So as we keep going, she also writes, the techniques video emphasize that the students need to generate the sankalpa themselves. So can you comment on this type of practice? So from the lineage that we're in and our studying between the two different lineages, we do not set sankalpas for other people. In a conscious state, in a conscious, let's say you're in a one-on-one session and you may do some conscious creation with the person. If you ask a child to just say, hey, draw anything, and the child's like, I have no idea what to draw. Well, obviously you have to give some shape to the container and say, well, let's draw a house. Do you want to draw a house with 2 windows or 4 windows, 2 doors, a pitched roof or a flat roof, like that? Similarly with the yoga nidra, say, well, geez, do you want to work? Are you working on physical body right now? Mental body, energy body? Physical body, energy body, mental body. Do you want to work with some deep programs in the subconscious mind with your mother or your father? You could take it really deep in the waters like that. So your role would be able to ask the appropriate questions, the telling questions to tug out the appropriate sankalpa. That's your role. I like that. That's a great question. So the practice is guided by the one leading the script, you yourself, and the inner work is self-guided. I had a shaman teacher, and she said, in neo-shamanism, it's all client driven. In old shamanism, it used to be, like the shaman would dictate the vision. So you think of, we're doing some visioning here. So in the old way, there might have been at a time like an understanding, like a father to a child might see, like, oh, this child really needs to study this because they have knowledge, they have superior knowledge. And so they might actually tell the person, say, look, you need to study this sankalpa, this forgiveness, because you have great anger or something like that, or surrender because you have too much drive, right? But in the neo way, what we want to do is, rather than saying you are an angry person, because that pushes everyone's buttons, we say, do you experience anger? They say, yeah, I can hot on the top. I have some pitta. I'm like a teapot, like this. Do you think you want to work with that? No, I'm not ready to really work with that. I think I use my anger in a creative way, and it only lasted 5 minutes. And so, okay. And then maybe they come back and then say, hey, look, I've been thinking about what you were asking me about my high pitta, my little bit of anger I have sometimes, and I think I'm ready to work with that. Can you help me find a sankalpa for that? Well, yeah. You see, so it's more dialogue driven, it's more inquiry driven to be able to help them get the sankalpa. And you may see it really clear, but really in a modern way of being really able to respect individuals for their growth process rather than put our process on them and make a mistake. We continue to guide them through the process and always see them as equals. In this equality of seeing their divine light masked by these limited lenses of the egoic self, of all the different snags and fragments of these subconscious programs that are playing out in our conscious mind, you may be able to see all that, but underneath that is their inner functioning intelligence. And if you take them to their inner functioning intelligence, I dare say, my dear, you will get excellent results. Oh boy, I really love your questions today. Let's see. Haley writes, can you discern between the meditative state and the yoga nidra state for the general public? Yeah. So in a basic way, I would start with yoga nidra is lying down and meditation is sitting up. So far, so good. So that's just the outside, right? But what's going on in the inside? Well, you'll see when we work through the koshas, we're working through many different series of techniques. So you could explain the kosha theories to them. Well, we work through the 5 bodies: physical body, energy body, mental body, like this. Whereas in yogic meditation, you may be doing all kinds of different dharanas. Dharanas are concentration exercises. You may be circulating the energy on the Arohan and Arahan channel, or Arohan and Arohan channel, the front channel and the back channel. You may be circulating energy on Ida and Pingala nadis. You may be circulating energy on Susumna nadi. You might, you may be practicing open source meditation, where the mind is just simply watching the thoughts, which is a very like Buddhist type meditation, which we also practice open source meditation. You may be doing closed source meditation, which is very specific concentration exercise to get specific results. So it would depend on the meditation that you're leading or that they're practicing to be able to differentiate between the practices of Yoga Nidra. So I think I would highlight what Yoga Nidra is. But what I do for the general public is I'd say for anyone who's, just to be cheeky, I'd say, if you ever tried meditation and your body is just killing you, I say, oh, I can't do that meditation. It hurts my body. I say, try this yogic nidra. This is meditation lying down. Very often that is a great link for people to be able to find a way to get around being so uncomfortable in their bodies. So I like that about yoga nidra practice. In the end result, they do achieve the same states of consciousness, the superconscious state. Depends on which path you're taking. So, Alpana Bose writes, are there any indications to practicing yoga nidra such as mental or physical health disorders? So when we say mental health disorder, I'm looking at, in this really strong categories of mental health disorders like schizophrenia or something like this, or really, heavily medicated bipolar or something like that. Yeah, that could be a mental challenge for practicing yoga nidra. What comes up for me is PTSD. So for our trauma-sensitive yoga people, we use yoga nidra very often for PTSD. I would say that there are grades of PTSD, and that someone in an active state may not find that closing their eyes or laying down and having somebody, be standing over them feels like a comfortable and safe place for them. So there may be some cases, in some really strong cases of post-traumatic stress syndrome, where yoga nidra may not be indicated. Second part of that question, physically in general, there aren't any physical contraindications per se. If you're in pain, sometimes it's very difficult to get past the pain to be able to practice yoga nidra. However, when you become really proficient in yoga nidra, I'd first say, make your nest so good that you can find a comfortable position. If you can find yourself a comfortable position and get out of physical pain, that is a definite boon. But if you're in physical pain, there is a way to be able to learn to be able to move in and through the pain, not disassociate from it, but in and through the pain, and move through the sensations of the physical body and step out of the pain cycle. Think about it like this. When you go to sleep at night, let's say you have an elbow pain. You've been doing too much fishing. So you're too much fishing. You have this terrible elbow pain. And you have this pain, and you lay in bed at night and you say, oh, so elbow pain. But then you begin to take your awareness on the breath, and you put your awareness completely into the middle of that pain. You'll find that there's a way that you're able to relax the minds in such a way that you will eventually pass through that pain and into energy body, into mental body. And normally, in that situation, you fall right into deep sleep, even though you had pain. And you could say, is the pain there when you sleep? Well, that's the interesting thing. When you wake up, the pain's right there. Yeah, pain was there the entire time. It's that the mind is relaxed away from the nerves, And so it shows you how we can attach and detach from the physical body, because we do that every night when we go to sleep. So yoga nidra gives you a practice to be able to sometimes help people in deep physical pain step away from that pain for periods of time. Daniela writes something about the course. She says, will we have access to the materials after we finish? That's a yes, for 3 months. And if you decide to download them, you'll have them until your computer crashes. Your computer's not going to crash, silly. Second, talking about time. Is there a minimum time for a session? 25 minutes? That's running it really tight. But yeah, you can, if you're really good and you get adept at the practice, you could do 25 minutes. Yep. To go through the 5 sheaths, 5 minutes a sheath maybe. She says, Danielle says, I'm an Ayurvedic certified instructor. Awesome. We love Ayurvedans, and she liked the doshas. Me too. How do you suggest working with a group? So, Yana and I talked about this morning. And, if you have a group that is familiar with Ayurveda, you could give some examples of the doshas and spend a little bit of moderate amount of time on explaining the sankalpas. If your group was familiar with Ayurveda, it's probably more applicable one-on-one with a client that you've gone through your preliminary talks with, the dosha talks and the constitution talks, and so that there would be an understanding there, so you could tailor the session in a really specific way for that. Could you do an example, make a workshop before a class? I think you could. I don't see why you couldn't, because you could do your education then, and then as you move forward, then you could work with them into the yoga nidra. So the groundwork would need to be there with the Ayurveda first. Jan and I are both trained in Ayurveda, and so that's one of the reasons why we brought this to this particular course. And so there aren't a lot of books out there that are speaking about this heavily. What we're doing is applying Ayurvedic principles to the yoga nidra practice, which is totally within the realm of what's good and doable for practice, because we're applying principles to the practice. You can apply the Ayurvedic principles to anything. So Daniela writes one more. If you do, for example, in yoga, and you'll practice right into Shavasana to Yoga Nidra, right? And the answer is simply, oui. Ça c'est correct. Yes. Ashley Flowers, my dear, how are you, Shankari? Can't wait to see you. Oh my God. Rabbits, February 1st. I'm going to see you in like 20 days in India. I can't wait. All right. Let's see. Curious about incorporating Yoga Nidra into a more regular practice. I like the idea of 40-day sadhana. Yeah, I hope you do that. When you're listening to that, do you do a recording, or are you guiding yourself through your mind? So you can do both. So you can listen to a recording. You can listen to a recording of somebody else. If you're working with your mind, you just want to be sure that you're not falling asleep. You're not off, designing new scripts in your head. You have to decide how well your mind sticks to the script. How much concentration you've developed through your years of practice, if you're ready for that layer and level. Myself, I always just practice in my own head. Yana, when I've seen her do 40-day sadhanas with just a script, because there's something lovely, not her own script, just like a Rod Stryker or something like that, and put it in and just stick to the same one. And it's really lovely when you listen to some of the other scripts, because then you can unlock the thinking portion of your brain. When you're trying to lead yourself, there's a portion of your mind that has to kind of think, and so it keeps sometimes some mental activity there from being able to drop more deeply. So when you listen to a recording, sometimes you can just like hit the play button and go. So I just thought I'd talk a little bit about those two for you, my dear. Here we go, Laura. Does Manasa Avasta need to go after Nyasa Anugrama? We would say, yes, please try to stick to the systematic order of the koshas. Again, not because we say so, but because we're following the classical principles of moving through the Panchakosha, the 5 sheets. So, does the Manasavasta have to go in reverse? Great question. I can't say no. We weren't specifically taught. No one ever said, hey, you can't do it in reverse order. But, there's a sense that in general, we recommend teachers like yourself to follow the traditional script so that when you're teaching it to people, they have a sense of what the practice is. And then we always want to say, make healthy adaptations. If for some reason you need to make an adaptation for yourself and count 1 to 27 in your head, I think that's fine. But in general, in class, I would teach the classical way, because that student of yours, they may decide to go on and be a teacher. And if they go be a teacher and then they're like, well, my teacher taught me it this way, but I'm learning it this way, then it creates a little confusion in the lineage. So if we can hold true to the root, then what we're planting for future generations remains intact. So that's why we like to try to stay with the tradition. Now, being a living tradition, we always have to realize there's special circumstance. So if there's something there and your heart says it and your intuition is guiding you, play with that, experience with that. But know the root, and then you'll always know the fruit, I like to say. Okay. So I love this one. My body tenses up during the cold sensation. Sometimes people tense in the cold, right? Yeah. So should I relax my body consciously as I go into this? So she's having an experience between conscious, or subconscious, let's say, mental reaction to cold. Ooh, I'm cold. And then there's also the physiological response to cold. I just, getting like little goosebumps or something. So I love that you're tugging out the difference here. So into the mental part, I would say relax back into the mental part and let the physical body get cold. It's okay to be a little cold sometimes. It's just cold. Don't take it too personal. Heat isn't just heat. They're just universal forces. They're not personal. They're not out there to get you. They're reflections of your likes and dislikes. So, but when you're working, I would watch for the area where you mentally contract. So you want to just see if you can relax back by that, but use your mind to create the sensation of cold on the physical body. That's the practice. And know the difference between the two. That's the real subtle art there. Great. I believe I read in Yoga Nidra that we're healing the nervous system and the sensory systems by the way we reverse our senses by going inward to out instead. We're going to go instead of the regular outward to in. Is this true? So yes, this is true. I don't recall that being specifically said in the book, but I haven't read the book in a bit, right? But intuitively, I would say, yeah, that's correct. Because if you think about it, we're normally usually always out here in our 5 senses. So energy is going out and they're taking in so much information. So in that process of going in the opposite direction of pratyahara, of abstraction of the consciousness from the 5 senses, as we abstract from that, then we get an opportunity for all of those karma indriyas, the organs of action, and the jnana indriyas, the organs of knowledge, for deep relaxation, for digestion at the deep agni levels, the tissue levels, at the deep internal level of mental digestion, like that, emotional digestion. So yes, I feel like you're really on there. So fun. Swami Satyananda Saraswati cautioned teachers not to allow students to share their experience of class, so not to compare. Is there a way that you've done this or generally speak with people one-on-one about their experiences? And so my response to this, I understand what he's saying about people comparing. There's a cultural component there that also I would be aware of. Perhaps maybe people don't speak about their internal experiences in an Indian sense like that. I'm not sure about that, but I would be in my mind wondering about his cultural lensing there. But my sense is, if you, as a teacher, if you set the container, after class, you've done the yoga nidra and you feel like you want to have some shares, you could set it with, so you could set the container with some languaging like, all right, my dears, and you don't have to say my dears, that's me talking. Okay, my dears, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to just hear if there are any shares. I want you to, step out of any type of comparison, because if you don't have anything you want to share, or you didn't have any like whirly lights going on in your head, and you didn't have any pranic experiences, don't worry about that. The reason why we may be doing some shares is so that you start to integrate and incorporate and understand that other people are having experiences, mental, pranic, physical experiences, emotional experiences inside of these practices. That type of sharing can be very constructive. It can help normalize the new experiences that people are passing through, and help them adapt and adjust and accommodate, in the words of Swami Vishnu, to the Yoga Nidra practice. So I find that those shares are really important, and then also leave space. If you don't want to share, you don't have to put any shares in the group, and usually that's enough with the container piece to be able to really get some good juicy content and help move your student body forward. So that's kind of fun. And then the last question she was asking about using mantras, the chakra mantras. And what I'd like to just say is, let's look at that next week when we get to the chakra script, and we start to work with that a little bit more, because it's just 1 week ahead. But you're right on track, my dear. So that has been a run through week 2 Yoga Nidra questions. Lovely questions from this group. So insightful, so heartfelt. I really get a sense, and Ayana as well, that you're really diving deep into the practice because of the nature of the questionings. We're having so much fun working with you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I can't wait to get to your assignments. I see that they're already starting to come in, so can't wait to start getting your assignments and start to give you your love letters back. Okay, my friends, let me chant the Om mantra to conclude. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace peace peace. Om